All right, everyone. Do I watch North Texas and Louisiana Tech? Or I talk college football with you? Or do I do both? Do I do both? Only 5 minutes left in the game, I believe. Not that I've watched any of it anyway, but it is on. Louisiana Tech and North Texas getting us started for the weekend of college football. And we will get you all set with all the big matchups and all the relevant storylines here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Please call in. We will be here for the next several minutes, hours, whatever it may be. It's up to you. 860-325-3687, 860-325-3687. All right, there's a number of comparisons I would like to make amongst the teams that are being talked about concerning that final college football playoff spot, whether that be Ohio State, BYU, Texas A&M, others. And oh, did anybody catch this matchup that's been put together for this weekend? If you're not doing anything, Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, switch on over to ESPNU. If you have ESPNU, BYU and Coastal Carolina. I love it. I love it. I love that matchup. Not necessarily going to be able to watch it live. I'll DVR it. But I love that matchup. BYU and Coastal Carolina. BYU said that they would play anywhere, anytime. They did have the opportunity to play Washington, and that fell apart for whatever reason. And we may just take a glance at the schedule and see what other teams could be playing each other. It's no surprise that more people are on their phones today than ever before. Even before COVID, everybody was on their phones all the time. Way too much. But that's the way of the world. That's what's happening these days. But especially since COVID hit back in February and March. Many small businesses were caught off guard, now scrambling to generate enough sales and traffic to stay open. So basically what you do online now means everything. So people need to know that you're there. If you own a small business, you get lost among the billions of sites out there. There are actually 2.6 billion people on Facebook. 2.6 billion on Facebook today. But fear not. The kind folks at Verma Digital are focusing all their efforts for the next year working with small businesses and helping them generate the traffic to their online space, whether it be with Facebook ads, Google AdWords, social media content, or the services of a full-fledged marketing agency. I can attest to this myself. I've had a few conversations with the fine folks at Verma Digital. They know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. Verma Digital promises to work hand in hand with you to bring the attention of your business to where the eyes are. They're out there, but to find them is another deal. I learned this on YouTube. I've had a YouTube channel now for almost 11 years. You just don't start a YouTube channel. Many people think you start the YouTube channel, you start producing videos, and people are just going to watch them. Of course, there are billions of people out there. They're all on YouTube, so you just start shooting videos, and people are going to watch them. No, there's just too much out there. Don't let your competitors pass you by. Go to vermadigital.com. I will pull up the graphic in just a second. It's vermadigital.com. Right now, I will even let you steer away from the live stream. Go to Verma Digital right now, vermadigital.com. Get your free consultation. I did, and you can also mention my name, Mark. And if you got to type it in, that would be with a K. And for those of you, this is an aside. My last name is not spelled with a D. It's commonly spelled with a D by my viewers. I don't know why. It's all over the place. Mark Rogers, R-O-G-E-R-S. But anyway, you just need to remember the name Mark with a K. Use that name as the promo code, and you automatically get 10% off all services. That's Verma Digital. Let's get that up there. All right, 860-325-3687, 860-325-3687. So before I change the crawl to provide you with the phone number, check out the crawl. Shop Amazon. It's Christmas time. I'm sure we're only 22 days away now. I'm sure I'm speaking to people right now who are shopping on Amazon and will be over the next few days. Please use the link in the description section that we provide. It's down in the description section of any of the videos. Use that link, and it helps us build the channel. All right, now we're going to get into the college football playoff races and the news of the day.
The call will start at the beep.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. I'm Mark, too.
Hey, Mark. What's going on?
Hey, I'm from South Bend, buddy, by way of Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
So, needless to say, I got a few dogs in this race.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. So, it also just so happens that when I was in my 20s, I moved my wife and family down to Charleston, South Carolina, and I met some good people from Charleston who are huge fans of Clemson. So now I'm back for 10 years in South Bend, and I've got a partner who I work with, who is actually from Muscle Shoals, Alabama. So I got to tell you, sir, I got a lot riding on this season.
You've got the playoff covered.
Yeah. So now I have a narrative that I'd like to share. Now this is personal to me, obviously, because I'm a lifelong Notre Dame fan. We have the opportunity this year to avenge every embarrassing loss that we've had since 1993. Now, we already took care of the Boston College thing. I'm pretty sure we shook that ghost. Okay? Then we got Ohio State in 05. That was super embarrassing, especially for me. Then we got Alabama in 12, which was obviously horrible. And we got Clemson. We have the opportunity. There is a scenario where we could go through all of these teams, avenge every single loss on their way to a national championship. Now, first of all, I'm a realist. I understand how daunting of a task that is. My hope was that possibly we would just, we could break out of the bottom of the top of the bottom into the bottom of the top. I never really saw us being quite that good to where we could bowl through every best team in the country on our way to a national championship. But I got to tell you what, man, this almost seems like fate or like destiny. Now, I don't really believe in destiny and fate. I do believe in God, but up until this year, I was pretty sure he didn't really care much about college football. So my question is this to you, sir. Does God watch football? And who's going to play Ian Book in our next movie?
Ian Book, you're going to have to help me out with the current acting community. I don't pay too much attention, so that one's on you and everybody else watching. Does God watch football? Well, he watches us, so he's got to watch football, even if he doesn't want to. But could he care less who wins and loses? He doesn't care. Even though Dallas Cowboy fans would, of course, have told you for years that they had the hole in the roof so he could watch his favorite team play.
That's true. Just,
Now, when you brought up Notre Dame,
like Mission Impossible, maybe it's Tom Cruise, since this is Mission Impossible.
Okay. Tom Cruise may need to have the best makeup artist in the world to take 35 years off of him, but he could play Ian Book.
CGI is doing wonders these days.
Yeah. As soon as you mentioned embarrassing Notre Dame losses over the last 25 years or so, right. I know where you were headed, but I thought of there was a loss to Tulsa there, wasn't there? And a really bad Syracuse team.
But we
Navy.
Don't really, And also, we don't play Michigan this year. We don't play USC this year. So I guess we're just going to have to take comfort in the fact that USC is undefeated, top of the Pac-12, and still only ranked 12, still only ranked 20th. Pretty much, they're just not even a factor. And, well, Michigan is a flaming hot dumpster fire, so, I guess there's that. And we don't play LSU this year, and that loss also sucked. In 06, the LSU loss, that sucked. But we did knock them off just a couple of years ago in the Citrus Bowl, so I kind of have to just say that was avenged, I suppose.
You've avenged it a couple times.
Yes.
You beat them in the Music City Bowl a few years ago as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So 2
That's
against
right.
LSU. You got 4 to make up on the
Exactly.
Buckeyes.
Well, but the big time one, the one that really mattered, like the bowl game one that kind of mattered. There's some in season type ones that we'd like to make up for as well when they caught our damn locker room on fire and tore up a bunch of shit, and we won't even let them come back to campus because of it. But that's besides the point. I'm not an Ohio State hater. I was born in the 614.
Very
I
nice.
just don't particularly care for their brand and style of gamesmanship.
All right. Well, Mark, it was good to talk to you. It all seems to be lined up very nicely for you to take down the big boys that have beaten you up in the past.
Well, I'm not saying that it can happen or that it will happen, but I'm just saying that it seems awful strange, almost Hollywood scripted. If they were to roll through this thing, it would be the greatest story ever told in college football.
There you
Well,
go.
anyways, I'll let you get back to it. I'm sure you have other calls. I appreciate you taking time to hear my narrative that I've not yet heard anybody mention, that if Notre Dame was to win a national championship, they would literally have to take down every team that's been good for the last 20 years.
Yep. Thanks so much, Mark. Appreciate that.
Thanks for listening.
Press 1 to start the call, or
All right.
the call will start at the beep.
It's good to know that I'm a true professional. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
You're the most professional, Mark Rogers. Don't let anybody tell you different.
That's what the Big Balls Ian book is telling me.
How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. This is Dave Greenshield, just introducing myself to the audience there, sir. I'm doing well, thank you. I just wanted to give a call in. Interesting that I followed a Notre Dame fan. I did want to mention that we beat them in 2015 in the Fiesta Bowl to add another bowl loss to the Notre Dame losses against Ohio State, if I may.
Yep.
That one may have slipped his mind. I don't know if he mentioned that one.
Well, I told him 4.
That's right. Yeah, 95 and 96, the Cooper years. Two of Cooper's best teams, by the way.
Yeah.
So,
And I believe before that, the Notre Dame series was 2-zip. So I think the Buckeyes were in a 2-zip hole for a long, long time. And then they got the 4-game sweep recently.
Yeah, I think we've made amends as of late against Notre Dame, that's for sure. All right, what I was going to ask you about, Mark, I got a chance to listen to you on your new found friend, Mr. Steve Davis' podcast. I shouldn't say newfound friend. I know you done a lot of work with him over the years the other day, and he was talking about the situation up there. And I found it so interesting that he actually was saying he's just done. He's done. He doesn't want to see them play any more football games. He's out. He wants it all blown up. Were you a little surprised to see him take that tack, by the way?
He made the statement either before last year's game. I can't imagine that it would have been before last year's game because they only suffered the one humiliating defeat before that. So it must have been after last year's, what was it, 56-27 loss, that he would not watch another Ohio State-Michigan game until Michigan won. So until Michigan won, and he had to hear about it because he wasn't going to watch it, that he was going to be taking his son to whatever was the hot Christmas movie of the season, and that was going to be how they were going to spend Ohio State Michigan time.
Wow, boy. I mean, I thought I went through some rough years. Hey, Mark, I lived through the '90s, so I know pain in this rivalry, but I mean, I still held out hope that we were going to eventually turn it around, and then we hired the right coach, and it worked out that way. But I listened to him a little bit last night on his podcast, and he had mentioned about their need to go out and find, I think he used the term a grinder as a head coach.
Yep.
I don't know. Yeah. And I found that to be interesting. To me, it sounded like he was making the case for Matt Campbell. Did that sound like that was maybe the type of guy he might be making the case for?
Well, when I hear the word grinder, hopefully that's not going to be in place of intelligence, vision, communication skills, leadership skills, all that sort of thing, because there are all sorts of grinders out there, and they are to be commended, but they aren't necessarily capable of taking on that challenge and finding success. But
Right.
he of course in his dissertation found issue with Michigan's approach to landing its last two head coaches, and didn't want to see them fall into looking for the wrong characteristics.
That's true. I mean, I get his point. I think what he's trying to say is maybe a young coach that's looking to prove himself. That's what I was that's the kind of, that was kind of what I was getting from his, his analysis there. Was that what you gathered as well?
I think, David, and this happens often with your phone calls, is that you hit on something that has sparked at least something in my brain, that as a big-time football power, I think that the issue many times is trying to find that the heavy hitters out there are obvious to all of us, and the heavy hitters are the big splash that everyone wants to see, and for good reason. I understand it. They've already proven themselves, and they've won at every stop. Why would you not want fill-in-the-blank coach? But you also have to be concerned with the coaches who have gone places at the end of their careers and not had the drive, the fire in their belly to get it done. I'm sure they still worked long hours but you do have to grind through recruiting and grind through a lot of tape and a lot of tedious information and keep on top of academic standards and do all those things as a college head coach. It's tiresome. It's a grind. They work a lot. And so if you're going to get the Lou Holtz at South Carolina, or the Mark Richt at Miami, or the Les Miles at Kansas, well, that's not the guy that you want.
Are you kind of indicating that a coach that's been through the mill a little bit and is not maybe the kind of have that kind of fire that he once had? Is that what you're trying to indicate by your statement there, Mark?
Yeah, and that's not. I'm sure that it's not an easy thing to indicate. It's not an easy thing to determine, because now we're seeing Mac Brown at North Carolina, and it appears as though he does still have enough juice to take on a job like that in a heavy lift. So it's not necessarily just connected to age.
Sure. I was a little surprised by that, because he's been out of the game for so long. Although, what I've said about him as a recruiter, I think he's one of the greatest recruiters in most recent history of college football. And, we talked about that run that, of course, that he had at Texas. But I just was wondering if he was going to end up fitting into the category you said, because he's been away from the game for so long.
Sure.
I think that the other point, Mark, that Dace was making is that, and I think this is happening with a lot of programs, where if you start to miss on a few coaches, your program really starts to fall behind. He was making the case that they could end up being Nebraska almost. I think that's maybe a little bit too far. But, I mean, certain programs definitely go through down eras when they miss on coaches. USC kind of went through this in the 90s until they got Pete Carroll. I think that Oklahoma went through this in the 90s until they hired Bob Stoops. So, I mean, certain programs seem to go through this down period of time, and then they can eventually, if they can score a guy like that, then they can get it turned around. Do you feel that, if you do start to cycle through those coaches, that's a possibility there? Or do you think that, that might be a little too far?
When you started that point, I was making a comparison in my mind between Nebraska and Michigan. And even though it doesn't seem likely that Michigan would fall into a Nebraska pattern of losing as much as they have over the past few seasons, and really Nebraska has fallen in stages. They went from the very elite top of the mountain late 90s to a rung below that, but still in the conversation, still able to get to a BCS championship game in 01, but they had clearly taken a step back under Bill Callahan at that point. And then to the mid to late 90s and their last days in the Big 12, when they were still a viable top 15 to 25 program, made a couple Big 12 championship games at the end of their run there, but it clearly not been able to keep up the previous standard. Then they go into the Big Ten and they take another slight drop to a lot of 8-4 finishes, and where any time that they played a top 10 or 15 team that they would get completely outclassed. And now, of course, they're losing 2/3 of their games and can't even beat anybody for the most part in the Big Ten. So
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, even though it doesn't appear as though how Michigan could possibly fall to that degree, I don't know what inherent advantages Michigan has over Nebraska. They're both now. Michigan's closer, much closer to better recruiting, but they don't have it actually in the state of Michigan. They're closer to it. They're closer to it in Ohio and Pennsylvania. And Nebraska and Michigan certainly hasn't been winning at the rate that Nebraska was in the mid to late 90s. So I don't know that Michigan couldn't be a 5-win team for a considerable amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing about it is, Mark, is that Nebraska had a situation too where first of all, I didn't think that Bo Pelini was doing that bad of a job at that particular period of time. When he was winning 8-9 games a year, which is a far cry when where they were with Riley and now under Scott Frost. So, and you know what? I think that joining the Big Ten hurt them, Mark. I think that if they were still in the Big 12, they would be a lot more competitive. Don't you agree with that, by the way?
I do.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, as strong as the Big Ten has become the last few years, and I know it's down obviously this year, but nevertheless, I think they would be benefiting, and also they probably would have access to that Texas recruiting base. I think a little bit more if they were in the Big 12 too, right?
Yeah, I just I think geographically and the way people think about geography in the United States and what regions fit with what regions and how it compartmentalizes just completely speaks to Nebraska being with Kansas and Missouri and Oklahoma and Texas, and not with Ohio and Michigan and Indiana and Wisconsin and Illinois.
Right.
And
it's kind of like,
in addition to the geography culturally as well.
Right. It just doesn't work. Hey, Mark, I was going to say, were you a little surprised to see the Herb Street comment about wave the white flag? Did you find that to be interesting?
What, he said that about Michigan?
Well, during the college football playoff show, he was pretty much making the statement that he thought Michigan was going to wave the white flag before they played Ohio State. and then he had to retract the statement. I don't know if you heard that.
It was referred to here, but I was sitting here the whole time that they were on, so I didn't watch the show. But then I knew that there was something that was said to that degree because just people were talking about it, but I didn't know exactly what he said. So he retracted that.
Right.
Why does everybody have to retract statements nowadays? Well, if he meant it, he meant it.
Yeah, I don't get it either, Mark. Although Herb Street does things on ESPN as of lately that's, kind of caused me a little bit of, whatever. But
yeah,
at the same time, I thought that was, because Reese Davis challenged him on it for making the statement in the first place. And, he felt compelled to apologize for it. I don't think he should have felt compelled to apologize for it. It's, bottom line, it seems less and less likely. I know you had your Buckeye guys on. It still seems less and less likely from what you're hearing that the game's going to be played, right?
I can't make a call on that. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me either way. I would say that if I were Kirk Herbstreit or just doing what I do, which is in many ways, it's the same thing. Anybody who gets on television, radio, the internet, whatever, and talks to multiples of people and gives their opinion, there has to be a level of responsibility. So if you're going to make an indictment that a team is giving up or should give up, I think he needs to take ownership of that. I don't necessarily think he needs to retract it if he truly believes what he says, but I would hope that he has some reason to believe that.
Right. Yeah, I'm wondering if you got pressure from the folks there to retract the statement. If you make the statement, stand by it. I'm with you, Mark. I've defended Herb Street a little bit in the past. I actually think he does a pretty good job, to be honest with you. As I've always said, he's a much better announcer than he is a quarterback, although all he was known for as a quarterback was making nice handoffs, right, Mark?
Yeah, they didn't rely on him for too much more than that those days. No.
Yeah. Well, when you got Robert Smith and Raymond Harris and Eddie George in the backfield, I don't think you could throw the ball a ton now. So I guess that doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, it was pretty much a senior season for him. Before that, not a whole lot of playing time, a little bit.
But yeah, he was behind Ken Graham right before that, as I remember.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I just wanted to give you a call, get some of your thoughts on those things. As always, a pleasure, my friend. I'll let you get to some more calls, and you have a good one.
Appreciate that, David. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I wanted to do some comparisons on these college football playoff contenders, unless we just keep getting phone calls, which we did there for a second. Cincinnati's 8-0. And this is just, it's a difficult comparison to make anytime you take a group of 5 and compare it to a Power 5. It just is a difficult comparison. Because we're taking best wins for Cincinnati as SMU by 29 points, Memphis by 39 points, Houston by 28 points, UCF by 3 points, and they still have yet to play Tulsa. They had that game postponed earlier in the season, and now they're supposed to play the Golden Hurricane next weekend. So that might, on paper, be their most difficult game, their best opponent, Tulsa. So they have taken on the best of the American Conference outside of Tulsa, and they have blasted them. Aside from UCF, they have blasted them. We would have to do an exhaustive bit of research, which I wouldn't mind doing if I was paid for it, if I could produce a video that would get 500,000 views and make me a couple $1,000s or whatever the case might be, whatever the math would be worth my time. Do an exhaustive amount of research comparing the group of 5 and the overlap of group of 5 games versus Power 5 teams. I would love to take all the group of 5 year to year and how they performed against the Power 5. Now, I have run those numbers from time to time just as a record to take all the group of 5 versus Power 5 games in a particular season. I think I did this at one point last season just because I wanted to see, and I just went week to week and added it up. And the Power 5 won about 85% of the games against the group of 5. But the research I would want to have done to substantiate or evaluate better the top group of 5 teams would involve more research and more analysis than that. Because it is tough to evaluate Cincinnati against everybody else. It just is. And in this season, it's more difficult because they're not overlapping games. We've got nothing. We would normally have a situation in which everybody in the American Conference would have played at least one, if not 2 Power 5 teams. And then we would know that Cincinnati played this well against all these American Conference teams. And then we would be able to connect some dots to say, okay, they beat Tulane by 31. Well, Tulane went out and played Ole Miss, and they played Mississippi State. Okay, Cincinnati beat Tulsa by 15, and then Tulsa went out and they lost to Oklahoma State by a touchdown. And then we'd be able to say, okay, well, Cincinnati also played SMU, and they beat them by 29. What did SMU do? Oh, they played TCU, and they played Kansas State, and this is what happened. And on and on and on. We would have a lot of connections to make. I don't believe in the transitive property when it comes to A to B to C. Okay, we are going to derive an opinion on teams A and C playing each other because they both played B. But when it's an amount of information, when it's over and over and over and over and over and over, and we've got 18 results, then we can start to find some trends and find some meaning. And David made the comment about the Big Ten being down this year. And I will acknowledge that that's the standard thought out there in college football. We've got another college football game on tonight. Utah State and somebody that I can't see. Utah State and somebody. Didn't know that we had a doubleheader on tonight on the fine CBS Sports Network. But David had made the comment about the Big Ten being down this year, and I understand where he's coming from because it appears that way. Penn State's down, Michigan's down, therefore the conference must be down because they were supposed to be the second and third best teams. But we don't know if the Big Ten's down. Why don't we know? Because nobody in the Big Ten has played anybody outside the Big Ten, so we have no idea. The aggregate record for the Big Ten is still 500, just like it was last year, just like it was the year before, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Navy Thomas 8, buddy.
Hey, Tom. What's up?
Hey, on your separate computer that's off to your side,
Yeah.
bring up your ESPN and bring up the rankings.
Okay.
And it shows CFP
Yep.
versus the AP.
Yep.
And I want you to look at that. And I want you to look for all undefeated teams.
Okay.
Here's the top 25.
I'm looking at it right
But
now.
the only one that is getting any rankings is Cincinnati. Let me flip back over and look at it. Cincinnati, BYU. This is on the CFP.
Sure.
Coastal Carolina.
Yep.
Now, why aren't they ranked higher? Okay, USC only three games, big deal. Marshall 7-0. Washington only 3 games. But then I look at the top 5,
Okay.
and the CFP moves Ohio State to 4th. But over in the AP has Ohio State number 3.
Yep.
So it's Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State.
Hmm.
But over in the CFP, it's Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson with
Sure.
1 loss,
Yep.
ranked 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to throw that up at you, just because I think it's disgusting. What was it? 2 weeks ago, Cincinnati was ranked up in the top 4.
So you want all the undefeated teams at the top?
Yeah, they were ranked way up there.
No, I'm saying
So
that
then I went back.
you
then
want
I
them.
went down
You want
the
them at the
list.
top.
And I look at Cincinnati, and then I look at BYU, Coastal Carolina. I'm just like, this is getting ridiculous, stupid, the way decisions are being made of any of this stuff. I think that CFP is probably doing the best, except for Clemson being 8-1, ranked ahead of Ohio State. Just my choice, but I just thought you would want to discuss that.
Well, I will give you my thoughts. And Navy Thomas, also understand that Colorado is 3-0, and they're not ranked at all.
Yeah, but they've only got 3 wins.
I know,
So-
but USC's 3-0, and they're number 20. Ohio State's only 4-0, and they're number 4.
Well, that's what I was saying tonight. Looking at both of these, I'm discounting all of the only 3 wins or 4 wins or 2 wins. And I just kind of kicked that off to the curb because they don't have enough playoffs. So, just my point. I just wanted to throw that at you and let you go with it, buddy.
Well, if you get a few minutes, Navy Thomas, I posted a video this afternoon where I basically burned the Pac-12 to the ground because they're making some stupid decisions about how to determine how their teams are going to the conference championship game. They're
I'm not even considering Nebraska being involved in any of it.
No, the Pac-12. The Pac-12. I'm talking about the Pac-12.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they're
USC.
they're going to use the college football.
USC with 3-0.
They're gonna use the college football playoff rankings to determine what teams get to their championship game, their conference championship game.
My point just goes along with you. There's no counting any of these that are 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, and then you got these other teams with 8 or 9 wins with no losses. Just my point. That's the only thing I wanted to throw at you.
Yeah, well, we knew we were going to get that this year because of the way things turned out.
So, all right, man. Talk to you later.
All right, Navy Thomas. Appreciate it. It's our man, Navy Thomas. So, you guys have my rankings. They're out there. They make sense. They're not perfect, but they make sense. So, yeah, there's a conversation about Clemson versus Ohio State. Clemson's played more games. Both teams have probably been equally as dominant in their wins. I think that's pretty close. Neither team has played a killer schedule. Clemson played the one really difficult game against Notre Dame, and they lost on the road without their starting quarterback, although DJ Uiagalelei played extremely well, and they had 3 starters out on defense, and they lost in overtime in that game. So do you value being undefeated, or do you value a difficult game on the road that went to overtime against the team that's currently ranked number 2 in the country? The College Football Playoff Selection Committee and myself are valuing the loss against the number 2 team in the country on the road, in which you're missing 4 or 5 starters. And then again, as I was talking about before Navy Thomas jumped on, it's just so difficult to look at these group of 5 teams and make an evaluation of how good they are, especially this season in which, again, in a normal season, you could collect all the American Conference teams, 14 of them 14, 12, 14. Take all of them, add up all the Power 5 games that they had played, and it's 1 or 2 per team, so it comes out to 18 or 20, and start to get a feel for how good the conference is against the Power 5. And then you see, okay, how well is Cincinnati played and dominated against the rest of the American Conference, and how did they go out and play against the Power 5? And you can make a judgment. You can make some connections there. We can't do that this year. Can't do it. The only thing we can hang on to in that direction would be Cincinnati's going to play Tulsa in 2 weeks, hopefully. And Tulsa went to Oklahoma State and lost by a few points. I think they led by 9 in the fourth quarter and they lost by 5, something like that. As I commented on the other night when the rankings came out on Tuesday, I have no idea why Iowa State's number 9. That makes absolutely no sense to me that Iowa State's number 9. They lost to Louisiana at home by 17 points. They lost to Oklahoma State. So they lost to a team that was at one point 10 spots behind them and has the same record and plays in the same conference against the same competition. And Oklahoma State somehow parlayed a 50-44 win over Texas Tech, who was atrocious, into a 8-spot jump. 8 spots. USC's 3-0, Colorado's 3-0. Take their 2 schedules, look at their opponents. You can't really make too much of can't find much of a difference between their 2 resumes. Yet USC is going to be ranked and Colorado's not going to be ranked. Why? Because the College Football Playoff Selection Committee knows that one is USC and one is Colorado. And Wisconsin was able to maintain its number 16 position despite just being 2-1. So Northwestern, think about this. Northwestern's 5-1. Wisconsin's 2-1. That's 3 more wins. That's playing 6 games versus 3, twice as many games. Northwestern is 5-1. Wisconsin is 2-1. They played head-to-head, and Northwestern beat them by 10 points. Northwestern, in addition to beating Wisconsin, has beaten some quality teams like Purdue's a decent team. Iowa's a good team, ranked number 19 in this ranking. A team that Wisconsin has not played, a team that Northwestern has played and beaten. So Northwestern has quality wins against Wisconsin, in Iowa, and Purdue. They also beat Nebraska and Maryland by 40. So Northwestern's 5-1, Wisconsin's 2-1. Northwestern won the head-to-head by 10, has 2 other quality wins, and they're only 2 spots higher. So that, again, just lets you know that the committee likes Wisconsin. They don't like Northwestern. That's all there is to it. And I don't mean personally that they don't like them. They basically just came into the season thinking Wisconsin was one of the 15 best teams in the country and that Northwestern was no good. And they came into the season believing that USC is one of the 15 best teams in the country and Colorado's no good. And even though the resumes through 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 games in the case of Northwestern should have changed that perspective, it really hasn't. So appreciate everybody out there that's encouraging everyone else to smash the like button. Michael had earlier made a comment about whether I had ever expected something to happen. I forget how he phrased it. I posted it on the screen and wanted to get to it. But you understand that if I post something to the screen and keep it there to remind myself to comment to it, then you guys make 1,000 other comments and I'm way behind. And I'm way behind right now. So Michael said something about, have you ever kind of had an intuition that something was going to happen? And it did. Yes, I have. I don't know if that was prayer or what that was or just coincidence, but yes, I have had that happen. And actually, I have known whether it was coincidence or prayer or just being able to figure things out. Yes. Dependent fanatic. Rich Rod had innovative offense, modern offense, and the defense got better each year until Hoke won the Sugar Bowl that year. After downhill for Hoke from there. Brady Hoke's 2011 and 12 teams were pretty good. Not just the 2011 team. Actually, the 2012 team, I think, was better than the 11 team. The 2011 team went 11-2. Beat Ohio State. Of course, we know that Ohio State was compromised that year without 5 of its best players and its head coach. But 11-2 won the Sugar Bowl, finished in the top 10. And then the next year, they only went 8-5, which doesn't sound great. But if you look at that Michigan team that played in 2012, they lost very, very close games to an undefeated Ohio State team. An undefeated Notre Dame team that went to the BCS championship game that they should have beaten. If they didn't have a running back playing quarterback, they would have beaten Notre Dame. They probably would have beaten Ohio State. If they would have taken their wide receiver, Devin Gardner, and just let him play quarterback against Ohio State, they probably would have beaten Ohio State. That Michigan team also took an 11-win South Carolina team that finished in the top 5 in the country to the final 5 or 6 seconds of the game. Final few seconds of the game in the Outback Bowl. They did get trucked by Alabama, but so did everyone else. So again, Snake Spence says that the Big Ten is down big this year. Maybe. I hope that we get to see enough bowl games and a college football playoff run by Ohio State or whomever, but most likely the Buckeyes, to see whether that's true. I don't know if it's true. I know that it appears that way, but we don't have any results. We have 0 results to back up that statement. None. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. Reasonable Golf here.
Hey, man.
Hope you're having a good evening.
I am. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I called because I saw something, well, 2 things. One, I saw something really hilarious, which was your video of ranting about the Pac-12.
The Pac-12 is just run by morons. That's all there is to it.
Particularly the way you shouted, "Do it!" at the very end. I replayed it like 5 or 6 times.
I didn't anticipate doing that. Like, I didn't have it pre-planned that I was going to do it. It just came out. Just do it. Why is this difficult? They have boxed themselves into a situation, and they actually have an out. So when we get off the phone, I'm going to explain this to everyone, and I hope everyone realizes how ludicrous and pathetic it is.
I think it really only takes 5 seconds to just hear what's actually happening. I mean, I watched your video. I had no idea what happened in the Pac-12. No one does. No one cares.
Except me.
You, apparently. But yeah, that is. I can't even imagine why they're not having those 2 teams play. And it didn't care. I'll stop talking about that. So I'll give you something to talk about when we hang up. But I got to ask you about something else. Another video of yours I saw.
Okay.
It has a very disturbing title.
Uh-oh.
I'm just going to ask you, just answer me a question real quick.
Okay.
If I gave Mark Rogers the ability to press a button and for starting in 2020 and from now on, he gets to determine the number of teams in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
What number is that? How many teams has Mark Rogers won the playoffs?
Give me just a second because I can't go back on this answer because once I make it, it's done.
Okay.
I want 16 teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, that's what I was afraid of. See, you and I have talked many times, and I always thought we were in lockstep with this. And
I'm okay with 8. I'm okay with 8, but we shouldn't be playing these group of 5. These group of 5 conferences. I know I point to my TV screen a lot, like you people would know what I'm pointing at, but I've got a group of 5 game on right now. Something needs to be done with these poor guys that go out there and bust their tails and get nothing for it. So I'm okay if they go play their own championship, that we have an 8-team playoff with a Power 5.
Okay, so your 16 teams is basically only there because you want something to do with the group of 5?
I want every group of 5 conference included, the conference champion.
So if we make the group of 5 like the FCSs where they have their own playoffs,
yes.
Are you back to 8 at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because I'm just trying to figure this out because 16 teams, the way if nothing else changed in the world and the way things are, 16 teams would essentially mean the regular season doesn't matter anymore. I mean, because you're going to start having 3-loss Alabama teams get in, assuming Alabama ever manages to lose 3 games again. You would have
sure
Ohio State, getting blown out by Iowa and getting in. Of course, that would have happened with 8 games. But you understand what I'm getting at here, Mark? You really might have a 7-6 Georgia Tech that got blown out by Clemson. They may squeeze in.
No, not with 16. I'm going to go, keep going, I'm going to go to the 2019 standings, and I'm going to make out a 16-team playoff with just the Power 5. I would love this. But I'm good with 8. I'm good with 8. That's fine. 8's fine. 8's great. As long as all the conferences are represented, that's all I care about.
How many games do you want in the regular season, man?
With an 18 playoff?
With a 16 team.
Well, I don't need a 16 team if the group of 5's not involved.
Because something like that, and this is what some people are afraid of with an 8 team. I don't really put a lot of stock into it. But if there's 16 teams, why in the world is anyone going to go out of their way to make a good out-of-conference schedule at that point? They can fall back on a couple losses and they'll still get in. They don't need the big games to boost their resume, particularly not the SEC teams. Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Texas A&M, Auburn, a time or two are basically going to get in almost every year at this point.
Yeah.
And you're okay with that?
No, I said 8 teams is fine. I said I wanted 16 if we've got the group of 5 involved.
Okay. So that is a distinguishing factor. If the group of 5 gets its own playoffs, we're back to 8.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's see you on the screen making your little list there. So I'm just kind of stalling until you come out with it.
I also saw that that you made a comment to one of my viewers who was suggesting a 12-team playoff. They thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, and he thought he was really smart doing it too, because he questioned my intelligence when I asked him to explain how you can fairly do that. And of course you can't. I know it's not possible.
Yeah.
Bye weeks are inherently unfair.
It is tough to come up with 16 teams.
I was kind of hoping in the back of my mind maybe he was going to come up with some way to get it down to 3 teams and then do 3-team football or something. I don't know, but he's not that creative.
Okay, so let's get Oregon in there. We've got We got 3 more spots to. Oh, this is actually, these teams aren't bad. Actually, I've got the entire SEC to go through, and I only have 3 spots. So obviously, they're going to get more than 3 in. Florida 10-2. So I'm going to have to knock out a couple teams here. That's easy. Virginia, the ACC only gets 1 team out of 16 in a 16-team playoff last year. The rest of the conference sucked. They're awful. Alabama's went 10-2. I'm trying to write down. I'm doing a little bit of math because I want their regular season records here, of course, because we don't know what that they would have done in a bowl game. Okay, so I got to knock out 2 more teams. Wow, these teams are pretty. Man, Michigan gets knocked out. Do you realize? Do I have this right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. Okay, allow somebody back in. I guess that would have been Michigan or Iowa, one of those 2. Do you realize here are the teams that would have made the playoff, and I'll try to read them off in somewhat of a reasonable order. So our 5 conference champions are Clemson 12-1. And, well, no, they lost. Hang on. I'm trying to be accurate here. Let me start over. Okay. Our 5 conference champions are Clemson 13-0, Ohio State 13-0, LSU 13-0, Oregon 11-2, and Oklahoma 12-1. So there's 5. And the rest of our teams are Alabama 10-2, Florida 10-2, Georgia 11-2, Utah 11-2, Notre Dame 10-2, Minnesota 10-2, Penn State 10-2, Wisconsin 10-3 after they lost the Big Ten championship game, Baylor 11-2 after they lost the Big 12 championship game, and Auburn 9-3 and/or 8. You need to take 2 out of these 3: Michigan, Iowa, Auburn, all 9-3. So 14 of the teams only have 2 losses or less, and only 2 teams in the 16 are 9-3. I think that's a pretty good playoff. Did you hear the teams I just read off all playing in a playoff?
I wrote them down.
That would be pretty phenomenal.
I typed it in very bad spelling, to holding the phone with one hand. I'm trying to type with the other one. But yeah, Mark, that's exciting. But like I said before, it's going to turn. It's not going to. It would turn college football into college basketball. March
No, it's not even close.
Is exciting, but no one cares about the regular season. No one. It doesn't matter. You just got to do barely enough to qualify for the tournament. You just said these last 3 teams have 3 losses.
2.
That
2 teams would have 3 losses.
But they don't deserve it. First of all, second of all, it's like I said before. You're not going to have any teams taking any unnecessary risks. There's no reason to boost your schedule at this point. Alabama would play Mercer 4 times, and then the SEC, the required 8. And they would probably be petitioning to get that 8 down to something more reasonable, like 4 or 5.
Okay, let me rephrase something. That if you've got a 16-team playoff, you have to win how many games to win the national championship? Is it 4? Yeah, it would be 4.
Yeah.
So
4.
You're telling me, okay, Auburn, they're 9-3. They're the 15 or 16 seed. They then go ahead and win 4 consecutive games. Think about that. 4 against the likes of, let's say, they had to play the number 1 team in the country to start. They had to play LSU. So they beat LSU, the LSU team of last year. They beat them. And then they beat, I don't know, Ohio State. And then they beat, I don't know, Alabama. And then they finish off with a win against Clemson. They wouldn't have earned a national championship.
I'm sure they would.
Oh, my word.
You're kind of like, you're kind of making my point for me, Mark. It's a great playoff. It's a terrible regular season. That's the essence of college football right now. It's the regular season. It's the most cool and interesting and unique of all sports. I realize the NFL makes 10 times as much as college football, but they have absolutely nothing on games like that Georgia and Notre Dame game was last year. Well, with all the light show and everything, or the Alabama LSU game of the century. They can't create anything like that because those games have so much meaning. Because there's only because there's only a very limited number of spots in the playoffs. In this system, it doesn't matter if Notre Dame loses that game to Georgia; they're in pretty much as long as they don't just completely crap the bed. So that's what I'm getting at is you would start seeing players once your team's won enough, they're just going to be like, okay, we're just going to sit the first and second string the rest of our season. It doesn't even matter if we lose them all. We're going to be in the playoffs.
Well, if they want to go play a playoff game in Columbus, Ohio, or Eugene, Oregon, sure. But if they want to play that at home, then they might reconsider. If they want to go play a playoff game in Columbus, Ohio on December 29th, then go sit down your starters, and you're going to play Ohio State in the first round in Columbus on New Year's Eve. Have fun.
I don't think anyone would get away with playing in Columbus, Ohio on New Year's Eve. Not even Ohio State players would do that.
Well,
it's pretty cold in Ohio. I'm not sure if you've been there or not.
I've been there for about, for about 25 years of my life.
I just heard you say you've never been to like the Michigan, Ohio State games. No,
I was offered to go to one, and I turned it down.
All right. Anyway, but you like if the group of five gets their own deal.
Yes. Yeah, don't misunderstand me here. I am not touting for a 16-team playoff in the Power 5. I'm touting for 16 teams if we include all 10 conferences. If not, we ship off the group of 5. They do their own thing. We get 8 teams, and that's what I believe is the best system. I am just letting you know that this would be a tremendous playoff. I didn't realize until I put the teams down. I thought it was going to be more watered down than this.
All right. One last thing I want to ask.
And by the way, I eliminated Iowa because I remember they played Michigan in the regular season last year and lost. So I took Michigan and Auburn as our 15 and 16 seeds. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that makes sense. I took Iowa just because Michigan's a joke. Anyway, so a lot of talk about the Big Ten right now.
Yes.
How they screwed up the championship, the minimum 6 games and all that. A lot of talk about Michigan waving the white flag potentially next week
to
screw Ohio State out of it.
Yep.
First of all, I want to make a quick point about that. Ohio State fans are jumping on that it would be Michigan screwing them. Well, the thing is, Ohio State decided not to play this past weekend. Is that not true? So if they would have just played their game and then played Michigan State, there's nothing Michigan could do. I'm just going to throw that out there. Ohio State could have played that game. The Big Ten itself did not say they couldn't. But the second thing I wanted to ask you about is, don't you think the idea of changing the rules for Ohio State is treating them special, like they're just some special kid in class we got to treat differently because he's not like the rest of us?
They are special.
Isn't one of the big problems in society that the people who are way above us on the totem pole get away with stuff, like that the law doesn't really apply to them, like they're above it? Don't you think if they changed the rule just for Ohio State, that would be wrong?
Well, it would be if it was just for Ohio State, but if it were to correct a wrong, and regardless of who the team was, we just assume it's for, or some people assume that it's for Ohio State, and I'll get this other call in a second, so sorry for whomever keeps calling or multiple people, but we're going to finish this conversation. So basically, if you can follow me here, if this is being done because it's Ohio State, of course it's wrong. But if it's just being done because they screwed up and they acknowledge that, and if it was Illinois, they would do the same thing. And they should do the same thing because they are putting their team in a better position to compete for a playoff spot, number one. Number two, it just makes sense that, did you hear me lay out the scenario of what the Big Ten could be doing on its championship weekend? They could send a 5-1 Indiana team to the championship game, send a 5-0 Ohio State team somewhere else. That is beyond idiocy.
It is.
The
Although
the 5-0 team
the
beat the
case was
5-1
stronger.
team. The 5-0
The case
team
was
beat the
stronger
5-1
when Indiana
team.
was when it looked like Indiana would have finished its season and been potentially 7-1.
Yeah, they
At
could
that
be
point,
7-1.
7-1.
But
Indiana could
even if they don't play these two games, they have qualified. So they play their sixth game. They're 5-1. They could go at 5-1, and you're denying a team that's 5-0 that beat the 5-1 team. So basically, you're saying you didn't play a sixth game, but had you played the sixth game and lost it, you would be good enough to go. That doesn't make any sense. There's no sense in that.
Everything you said is correct, and I agree with all of it, 100%. I am just skeptical that if the situations were reversed and Ohio State was the one qualified, but with one loss to Indiana, no one's making this change.
It's like,
I'm just skeptical.
Okay, you could be right. We don't know. It's like saying, Mark, this is your math exam, and you need a 90 to get an A, and then I hand it in, and I forget to fill out one of the answers, and I get a 98 on it out of 100, but I didn't fill out all the answers, but I got a 98, and you saying, oh, you're disqualified, you didn't fill out all the answers. I got a 98. I can't not get less than a 98. Go ahead and mark that one wrong, and I'll take my 96 or whatever.
Well, if nothing else, this is going to be fun to watch. I'm not sure if it's more fun or nerve-wracking for you.
This is the time of year I just wish I had a bigger stage. This is the time of year when I can pick on the College Football Playoff Committee and how stupid they are. And when I say that, let me rephrase that. I have great respect for the people that are on the committee. I don't even know exactly who's on the committee right this second, but in general, I think they're very qualified people, good at what they do. But some of their collective responses and decisions, I think, are to be questioned and made fun of. But the whole process is a joke. And then for conferences to take their tainted rankings to apply them to determine who wins divisions and goes to conference championship games is ridiculous. And then we've got situations now, like with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, where they can't even figure out a simple math problem that took me, and I'm not any genius, and anybody else with half a brain to figure out how to solve the problem. And they can't.
All right, man. From the sound of that and from the looks in your chat, you got a couple of Ohio State fans who really want to lay into me. So I'm going to go and get off and give them their shot.
Okay. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Here we go. Oh. Why didn't that take? Give me a call back. I will pick it up. And then I will address Mr. Dallas Baker. Dude, what are you talking about? Because I need to get schooled by Mr. Dallas Baker, I guess. He knows so much more about college football than I do. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Byron.
Hey, Byron.
I'm glad to finally get through. I appreciate all Reasonable Dump's input and everything. He's a good chap and good combo.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to call in and give a little bit of a story time.
Okay, story time.
That's okay.
Let me kick back for that. All right, go to it.
Okay. So what was it? It was 3 years ago or was it 2? Last time that Clemson went up to Blacksburg, right?
Sure.
It was in October. I think it was the 2018 season. No, it was the 2017 season. Kelly Bryant went up there, so 3 years ago.
Okay. Yep.
We went up there, and thank goodness we were blowing them out within the first quarter or so.
Yeah.
My mother's a cancer survivor, and she has gastro problems every once in a while.
Yeah.
And during that game, we had to call 911. She was having such contractions and pain in her gut that she couldn't stand it. And of course, both of her sons that were watching the game with her are drunk and can't drive. It was a night game, of course.
Gotcha.
So we literally had to make a decision. Okay, are we going to try to take her to the hospital ourselves, or are we going to be responsible and call 911? And I was the one that ended up going to the hospital with her, rode in the back of the ambulance and everything. So I'm just praying, and like I said, thankfully we were blowing them out. I mean, the game really wasn't even in question, and I just think that was kind of one of those God moments, you know. Like, hey,
wow,
I got this for y'all. You go take care of your mom. So that's my story time. I'm praying and hoping that doesn't happen again. I don't ever want to have to do that again.
No, hopefully that's a once in a lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, that was the first time I ever been in an ambulance, and at least I was not the person that was needing the treatment. But second to none, watching your mom be in pain like that, that's gut-wrenching. But like I said, thankfully, I didn't even have to worry about the game because we're massive Clemson fans. And I know you've had somebody, who was it that you had on earlier this week that was commenting about how it's just a little different down in the South. And you covered football down in Mississippi, so you kind of know. It's just we love football down here, bro. It's getting great. So I'm praying and hoping that doesn't happen again, and I'm also praying and hoping that we are already in control within the first quarter.
Yeah, I will not deny that statement about football in the South. And there are, and I think there's a reason that the SEC is what the SEC has become, and the Big Ten is what the Big Ten is. And the Big Ten basically is able to somewhat, I don't want to say match that, duplicate it, whatever term you want to use, in pockets, not over the course of the whole conference, but in pockets. And I think that's reflected in TV ratings and money and all that other stuff. And there's a reason, if you look at, and in the former job that I had, I would get TV ratings that would show the ratings per TV market. So you would get a feel for how fervent college football is, fan bases across the country. And you would see where the ratings were sky high all through the South. Every Southern market, the college football games were doing the best down there. But then there was the smattering in Columbus, Ohio, was always in the top 5, and various parts in Ohio and eastern Pennsylvania. But mostly, yes, all the South. All the South.
I felt like I wanted to share that with everybody.
It's a great story.
It's not often. We've only gone up to Blacksburg since Virginia Tech has joined the ACC. We've met them a couple times in the ACC championship. I remember the first time that we played them when they joined the ACC. This was back. I was back in high school. I think I was a sophomore. I was like 2010, and I was talking so much smack to every single VT fan, and then we go over there and get blown out. I hated it.
That's great.
I'm really looking forward to this game. It's not. I don't exactly Pete did his show with earlier today with the lunch money and was talking about the lines and said it was a 22.5.
Yeah.
Who would you take Clemson in that?
Sure.
I wouldn't.
Well, I would, but I also know I will be picking Clemson to beat that spread. I will be picking Clemson to most likely to beat that spread without even giving it much thought. But I'm not going to be surprised if they don't beat the spread, because there's a reason that Vegas is successful in putting these numbers together. Because I don't know what the score would be where Clemson doesn't cover, but shoot, they played Virginia about 2 months ago, and what was the final score there? It was like 41-23, and they slopped around for 3 quarters, and then they broke out to a big lead, but then they let a backdoor cover touchdown happen in the last couple minutes, and they were like a 23-point favorite. They only won by 18. Happens all the time.
And that number being 22, 22 and a half, the half really doesn't truly matter with it being 22. You either win by 3 touchdowns or you don't, or win by more than 3 touchdowns or you don't. If you get 3 touchdowns and a field goal, you cover that. There's no real like good combination of math to get to that 22 and a half.
How about a 42-20 game where they don't cover?
42. Okay.
45-23. 46-23. There's 23. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's not likely. It's not as likely as dropping that a point and there being a big deal between 21 and 21 and a half. Yeah, it's not even close. The number of times that comes up.
You throw out all these numbers and make me think, and I'm just sitting here wondering, it's like, damn, I'm sounding stupid.
No, I'm basically backing up your point, but I'm letting you know that it does. Of course, it does happen. There are differences in scores by all sorts of. But if we went through the entire college football season and found all the games that were decided by 21 versus all the ones that were decided by 22, it wouldn't be close. Yeah. Your point makes perfect sense, but it could happen, and it does happen.
Yeah, well, anything can happen except for what I watched. I know you've watched a little bit of the SB Nation stuff on YouTube and like their breakdown of like, I think they call it Chart Party or whatever, where they break down the super analytics football and everything. Have you seen the one where they break down all the scores that are possible?
No, that sounds like
actually happened.
That sounds like something I would find interesting, but I've never watched any of that. I don't know what you're talking about, but maybe I need to look it up.
Okay, so it's they changed their YouTube name. It used to be just SB Nation.
Okay.
On YouTube, and I love their stuff. One of the main things that they do is called that I love, and I think that you'll like, is called the Chart Party.
Okay.
They've got one called the worst punt ever, and it's about an hour long. They break down every single punt ever taken in the NFL.
Okay.
They analyze the down and distance. They analyze where they are on the field, the reason why, the score of the game, and everything. I mean, they take it all into consideration, and they bring to a point the worst and most pathetic and most chicken punt ever. I'm not going to spoil it for you. I think it's called Secret Base now. I think
Base?
That's the YouTube channel. Secret Base.
Base with a B?
Yeah. Secret Base. B-A-S-E.
Okay.
I think you'll love it. Go check those out. And for everybody in the chat, if you like football, if you like stats.
Yeah, see, I would do a more stats and analytical oriented channel here if I had the time to do it. Like if I had hours and hours to pour into one video, then I produce one video. Now, if I could get a couple 100,000 views on the video, then it would pay off in terms of revenue, but it wouldn't. because I would get probably the same amount, if not less, than I get now. So I need to crank out quantity. But I love stuff like that. Now, see, Byrick, when you brought up the worst punt the worst punt ever, and they did it analytically, what came to mind was, I don't know if many people saw a punt. This was just this season. This was about 6 weeks ago. There was a punt in a group of 5 type game. I don't remember who, but the punter was in the end zone, or was in the end zone. Yeah, just a step or two from the back line. And I'll give you the conclusion of it, Byrick. How is it possible that a punt returner returned a punt for 0 yards and scored a touchdown?
Oh, was that Citadel game?
It might have been. I don't remember who it was, but I think
that was the Citadel USF game.
Yeah. So the snap was bad. So he's scrambling around for the snap, and so then he kicks it off. He hurriedly kicks the ball off the side of his foot.
And get it out of the end zone.
It doesn't even make it out of the way the end zone, and the special teams player on the other team just catches the ball in the end zone, and it's a touchdown. Yeah. I had never seen anything like that. That was incredible.
Yeah, that's a heck of a play. That's effort on the defensive special teams, literally just pushing through. But then again, Clemson played Citadel a couple weeks later, and that wasn't very surprising.
Yeah.
But the more of the reason I get what you're saying is that that was one of the worst punts ever. To be honest with you, actually, the worst punt ever was the Michigan punt against Michigan State.
Well, they never.
Ever. In terms of about just straight up worst punt and decision,
that cannot be. Terrible. Yes, that can be.
Just throw the ball
not
anywhere.
Debated.
Throw it anywhere.
Yeah, or not even throw it. Just dive on the ball. Just lay on the ball, and the game's over. Yeah. The clock had hit 0, so that was the last play of the game. And no, you're going to basically just flip it.
He fumbles the ball.
I'll
never forget that.
He probably could have fumbled the ball more effectively instead of just lobbing it up in the air where it was just caught on the dead run by the Michigan State guy who runs for a touchdown, which cost Ohio State a playoff spot.
Yeah. Which year was that? That was 2016, right?
15.
15?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that was the same year that, if you recall this play, Byrick, in a similar way that Ohio State was victimized by that kind of crazy play in a game that they didn't play in to miss the playoff. And when I say miss the playoff, they would have had to go to the Big Ten championship game and win, but they most likely would have won. Bama made it to Atlanta in the SEC championship game almost through reverse fortune. So that was the year that Ole Miss beat Bama, and they had the tiebreaker on Bama. And they went to Arkansas and were winning in overtime. You remember the Hunter Henry play?
Yeah.
So it's like 52-51. They lost in overtime, and it was down to the last play of the game, and Arkansas had like a 4th and 23 in overtime, and they throw like an 8-yard pass to Hunter Henry. Well, he's nowhere close to the first down marker, and he's about to step out of bounds, so he just whips the ball over his head, just throws it up in the air, and it just comes down in a pile of bodies, and Alex Collins just picks it up and runs for a game-winning touchdown on like a 4th and 23. And Alabama goes to the SEC championship game.
Speaking of the SEC championship game, how much of a chance do you think Florida has? Like, if you had to give it a percentage-wise, what percentage do you give Alabama and what percentage do you give Florida, considering both teams are 100%?
80-20 Bama.
I can kind of agree with that. I think Bama's defense is going to cause Trask to really struggle and find a groove. I know Pitts is back, and the Kyle to Kyle connection is better than AOL. Just,
Yep.
I just think they're going to be able to. I mean, Patrick Surtain has come on. He's finally found out what he needs to do in the backfield. I mean, he's always had the talent, but he's just shutting stuff down and all that.
For
But
sure.
I just wanted to mainly call in, give that story time about the VP game. That
Yeah.
is a once in a lifetime type of thing. I hope
We
that
hope.
never
Yeah.
happens to anybody. I hope that never
Yeah.
happens to me again. It's just, but with the VT game coming up, and we don't play them very often. We're also traveling to Blacksburg. I just felt I needed to share that with everybody.
No, we appreciate that. That's awesome. Well, we're grateful that everything turned out. It now becomes
awesome.
It now becomes a good story. But yes, not a great incident to live through, I'm sure.
No, I mean everything was fine. It's just kind of like she just was having ridiculous pains. And if you've known anybody that is a cancer survivor, you beat the disease, and you gotta beat the treatment. You gotta beat all the extra stuff.
Yeah.
It's not a one-time win battle.
Yeah.
So, hats off to all the cancer survivors out there.
Absolutely.
But Mark, I appreciate you taking my call.
Okay, Byron.
We'll holler back at you some other time.
Yeah, do that.
Blessed everybody.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
No problem. Bye.
All right. Let me clarify something. So there was a comment made by, it's a pretty frequent person in the chat, something about the College Football Playoff Committee and the people that are in the committee, which I've lost track of. They've shuffled in and out. I used to keep better track of who's in the committee. R.C. Slocum, Ken Hatfield. Yes. Ronnie Lott. Yeah. These guys know tons of football. There's no question about that. So let me clarify, because I've stated this a number of times. My rants against the College Football Playoff Selection Committee always start by saying they have an impossible job. I have great respect for the people on the committee. Maybe not every single individual that's ever served on the committee, I don't know, but I can't think of anybody that I have found to be a poor choice to be on the committee. Okay, certainly not Ken Hatfield, R.C. Slocum, Ronnie Lott of USC, Texas A&M, and Air Force / Arkansas fame. Okay. I have said many times they have an impossible task. Okay. Some of the decisions that they make, I don't believe, make a whole lot of sense. And they are continually, from year to year, from week to week sometimes, resting on different laurels and different pillars as being their tenets of selection. And that's even understandable, because they can't foresee situations in which they want to make a different determination when they just said a few weeks ago or a couple months ago or 3 years ago, well, we do this, or we prefer this, or we believe this to be most important, or the top 3 components. But now they're making a decision that negates that or contradicts that. And it's understandable, because they can't foresee the situations coming down the road. Weeks later, they should be able to a certain extent, but a year later or 2 or 3 years later. So they've made a lot of amendments to what they have valued through the years. And now they seem to have rested upon, we select the 4 best teams. And they probably should have stated that out of the gate, and that would cover every situation. Because, of course, that's a ludicrous statement to make, that we select the 4 best teams. They should say, we select who we believe to be the 4 best teams. Because nobody, not including myself, not including anyone watching, nobody knows except God Almighty, and He doesn't care who the 4 best teams are.
Want to start the call or to decline?
All right.
The call will start at the beep.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McD Sports Sport. How are you doing?
McD, what's going on?
I'm a bit annoyed with the University of Michigan and the obvious ploy they're trying to do, and it's probably going to end up working. It sucks that mail is part of the ploy.
Yes, and not playing football.
Yep. I think they're avoiding Ohio State.
Well, a lot of people do.
And I think they're using this mailing game as part of it, which really annoys me.
So in what way do you think that the Maryland game has much to do with it? Just so that they can get out in front and make it look a little bit more reasonable that they're missing the other game, and not make it just like, okay, suddenly we've got all these COVID positive tests, we're going to have to miss the Ohio State game.
Yep.
Okay.
So they can make it look like there's an actual issue there, not just some random thing. So they have like a track record.
Okay. I think there are a lot of people in your camp.
And you want to know what the sad thing is? They would beat them down by 3 touchdowns, most likely. So we get to miss on that this year.
Yeah, I do think that Maryland would win that game. Yeah.
Yeah. And I understand Kirk Herbstreit walked back those comments basically because he's on a big-time platform. But, I mean, he was absolutely right with his gut feeling. He's absolutely right. I mean, I think Florida State tried avoiding Clemson. I think that Michigan's avoiding Ohio State, and they're just using the mail and avoiding mail-in too, because they're using the mail-in game to avoid Ohio State. So you might as well just say they are avoiding mail-in as well. So, I mean, I'm very. I mean, I don't know so much about Florida State, but I hate the term blue blood. Because to me, I don't even know what really qualifies as a blue blood.
I don't like it either, and I had to address it one time today, but go ahead.
But these so-called blue blood programs avoiding big-time schools, like to me, Michigan is a tier 1 school. Like, people would watch Michigan if they're on Big Noon Kickoff or the ABC night game. In my opinion, for Michigan and Florida State as well, people would watch Florida State as well, despite their woes over the past few years. For them to be avoiding opponents is laughable. It is absolutely laughable, and it's very disgraceful, and they should be punishments given out to this if it turns out to be true. I definitely think Florida State avoided Clemson with that chicken, what that happened down in Tallahassee. I think there's actually evidence there that Florida State avoided Clemson. To me, Michigan is just a gut feeling, but I think there's evidence of Florida State.
Well, Florida State now has opted to not play a couple of games that they could have played. Yeah.
That's to make themselves look good.
The point that I made the other day, or actually this was today during our Ohio State show about the Michigan situation. And this doesn't mean that Jim Harbaugh has the authority to make the decision on whether to play or not to play. It might be completely over his head and out of his hands, but let's say he does. So to me, it's ironic that we've got a coach who, as a player, was on the positive side of this rivalry, winning 2 big games, not losing to Ohio State. And in one of those wins, he guaranteed the win, and he made good on his promise and took Michigan to the Big Ten Championship in the Rose Bowl with a win over Ohio State. Now, as a coach, we know he's 0-5 against the Buckeyes and is almost certainly going to go 0-6. I would think that in a legendary, all-time great rivalry, that it would be more honorable and more respected to field a team, to go out there as competitors, And even if you get your butts kicked completely, just kicked in, and your face planted in it, and you lose 59-10, that should earn you more respect than dodging a game, dodging an opponent, where even though you can put it behind the falsehood of safety regulations and keeping the players safe, that everyone knows you're dodging the opponent, that it would be, I would be able to go out there, even if it's my last game at the University of Michigan as Jim Harbaugh, and hold my head up high, knowing we at least went out there and competed our best, rather than dodging someone.
Yeah, I mean, I think of dodging them. I really do. I mean, and I think I kind of hit on this before. Michigan's athletic director, and I don't know so much about the athletic director, but the president did not want to play football. They basically had to make these protocols for 3 weeks sitting out so they could play football. That's how serious he was about it. So I really feel like, I hope I'm wrong about this, but if it turns out Michigan does not play Ohio State, and there's any people saying, I'm sure there is people going to be saying they're avoiding Ohio State, that's just not a good look, and people are going to remember that for a while. So, I mean, it is what it is. I also want to talk to you because I watched one of your videos. You might have released it yesterday, but I watched it today about 16-team playoff. Absolutely not.
Oh, that
Absolutely
was
not.
yeah, that was with our guy Will Gunter. He would like a 16-team playoff. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. This playoff is going to be legit. First of all, Ohio State's making the playoffs, even if they're not in the Big Ten championship game. If they play Wisconsin, it doesn't matter. Ohio State, I think, is clearly a top, I would say top 5, but I think they'll get the benefit of the doubt and get that number 4 spot. I think whoever wins comes to Notre Dame in the ACC championship game will get another spot. I do think Alabama will beat Florida and get that 3rd spot. And then that 4th spot is either going to be Ohio State or Texas A&M or maybe a Cincinnati or BYU. But, and by the way, give credit to BYU for scheduling Coastal Carolina there with a, basically, I think a 48-hour window, basically. Give them a lot of credit for scheduling that. I know Coastal Carolina had a game against Liberty canceled, so, but give Coastal Carolina credit, too. They found a very worthy opponent. But overall, Texas A&M, yeah, they won all their games, but the one game they lost was 52-23 to Alabama. I might have the score pick wrong, but it was a blowout.
52-24.
So,
Yep.
52-24. So why is Texas A&M seriously getting considered, and they can't even be? They're nowhere close to Alabama. 52-24. That's nowhere close. And Florida, I don't think Florida should be in the college football playoffs unless they beat Alabama in the SEC, because I look at the SEC East, you have 2 coaches that are gone. Kentucky, I mean, they're okay. Tennessee's not that good. And then Georgia, probably the best team ever that does not have a quarterback. And Missouri is okay as well. But, I mean, the one game they lost was to Texas A&M. So if Florida goes out there and loses by 2 touchdowns, I mean, Alabama's clearly cut and dry number 1. I don't think anybody in the Pac-12 makes it, and I don't think anybody in the Big 12 makes it. So
you do understand Texas A&M's argument, right?
Yeah, I do.
If they go 9-1 in what is probably, and there's no way to prove it this year, but what most people think is the best conference in college football, and Florida wins the SEC, they beat Florida head-to-head. There's their argument.
If they beat Florida, then yeah, I think there's a legit argument there. But
well, they already beat them.
I don't think Florida beat Alabama. No, I'm saying if Florida beats Alabama, I meant if Florida beats Alabama, I think there's a legit argument there. But I can't overlook that 52-24 loss to Alabama.
Well, it should be taken into consideration, absolutely. But we can look at this two different ways. If Florida beats Alabama, if they do, then Texas A&M is going to have the same record basically as Florida. They're going to have one less game played, 10-1 versus 9-1, and having beaten Florida, and they're playing in the same conference, so they're basically playing the same competition. Whereas if you could also flip it around and say if Alabama beats Florida just as badly as they beat Texas A&M, then maybe in a sense it doesn't look as bad for Texas A&M that they say basically Alabama's beating everybody like this, even some of the best teams in the country. So I'm not a Texas A&M supporter, but I'm just telling you what their argument is.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but I take it back to your Buckeyes back in 2018 when they got ran out the building by Purdue. They didn't make it.
Yeah, that team won the Big Ten championship.
And they didn't make it.
Yeah, they didn't make it because there was a tie to be broken between them and Oklahoma. Oklahoma had the opportunity to avenge its loss against Texas in the conference championship game, and they didn't get blown out. Ohio State had better wins than Oklahoma, but Oklahoma did not have the bad loss, and they got to avenge that loss. So I said at the time that I was not upset that the College Football Playoff Selection Committee made a bad choice, but I was just saying that basically Ohio State had an argument.
And what about when Penn State got ran out the building by Michigan and still won the Big Ten championship?
I understand that debate too. On Ohio State's side, they had a better record than Penn State, 11-1 versus 11-2. They had better non-conference wins. They beat Oklahoma on the road that year. They beat Wisconsin on the road. They had better wins than Penn State. And they didn't have the bad loss. Whereas Penn State's argument was, we beat you head-to-head. We won the Big Ten championship. I would have gone the Penn State route because of the head-to-head in the Big Ten championship. But I understand why Ohio State got selected, because they had a really tough schedule and they won big games and they had a better record than Penn State.
All I'm trying to tell you, Mark, is teams that get ran out the building, even if it's just one game, with this committee, and granted the committee has changed for the most part, I'm sure some people are still there from back in 2018. They're not going to select a one-loss team that got ran out the building. Granted, Alabama's better than Texas A&M, but it was still a blowout over a team that is undefeated or probably has a more respectable schedule. So that's why I don't think A&M's going to get selected, or unless it comes down between them and Cincinnati and BYU.
Yeah.
And then I think probably they will. But I expect Alabama to beat Florida in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, I do too.
But,
I do too.
Yeah, I just want to make the point that A&M's loss to Bama, I think, is too big of a loss for them to be considered really that serious. But give Jim credit. I was kind of on him going into the season saying he had to do something. And they have a big game against Auburn this weekend. I think they beat Auburn. They go 9-1. But give Jim credit. He's done something. So 9-1 is very respectable in the SEC.
Yeah.
So,
but I'm also not going to be surprised if they get tripped up. They're not that good.
That is true. That is true.
And they're going to Auburn this weekend. That might be the one.
Yep.
All right, McD.
Well, Mark, I'm sure Yeah, I'm sure you have phone calls coming in. Thanks for taking my call. Go Terps. We should be beating Michigan, but we'll beat whoever else we face.
All right, folks. Oh, he's taking another one here. Okay, here we go. Okay, maybe not. All right, folks. Good to see everyone on here. Again, we would like to get this show sponsored. I'm here every night at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, or roughly in that neighborhood. If we've got another live stream, I may at times segue like a 7 o'clock live stream, team-specific live stream right into this show, for example. But basically 9 o'clock Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, through the college football season, aside from a few special events that I will be attending. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Again, sponsors, people. Sponsors, we need them. I'm going to read my sponsor script right here, so I'm sure everyone will hang on the line for this. No surprise, more people on their phones than ever before, even before COVID, but especially since COVID. Small businesses caught off guard, scrambling now to generate enough sales and traffic to stay open. 2.6 billion people on Facebook. So fear not, the folks at Verma Digital, if you've got a small business, I've talked to these people several times. They're focusing all their efforts for the next year in helping small businesses generate traffic to their online space through Facebook ads and Google ads, social media content services for a full-fledged marketing agency, Verma Digital. Okay, Verma Digital, let me find the... I need a graphics person. Need a graphics person, and I need a producer. How about that? And a call screener at times when we have those wild nights when a bunch of morons want to call. Verma Digital promises to work hand in hand with you to bring the attention of your business to where the eyes are. So don't let the competition trample you. Go to vermadigital.com right now. Schedule your free consultation. All right, mention my name, Mark, with a K, M-A-R-K. Mention my name, Mark, and you automatically qualify for 10% off all the services available there. So again, we need more sponsors here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We would like to keep alive our Ohio State, Florida State, Miami, and Nebraska shows if we don't get sponsors and or contributions from you. So I've been on for almost 2 hours and no contributions tonight. So we need contributions both from you and from sponsors to keep these shows going, or we'll have to unfortunately do other things when I would like to be arguing college football with you. All right, everyone, great to see you. We will see everyone soon, meaning Saturday after the noon games, I guess, unless I've got something that I really need to say tomorrow. Oh, that's right. I did promise Monday through Friday at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock Eastern Time, Friday night. We will see you then. There it is from David. Love it. AS, good to see you. Who else is in here? Don't believe that would be me. Never been a DJ. Yes, thank you. Aesthetics, hairstyle, hard style. We will see everyone tomorrow night.